Hello there, my name is Daniel B. Smith and I'm the Director of Marketing and Resource Development here at United Way of Douglas County. And I'm joining you today because it is January 2021. And that means that we have both announced and awarded grants in our two main priority areas, basic needs and racial equity. And there's one organization here in Douglas County that we awarded a grant to in both of those categories. And that organization is the Sunrise Project. And obviously the sun is out right now. It's a beautiful day. And so I thought maybe I would head over to Sunrise Project and find out a little bit more about what they're up to and what they're going to be using these funds for. Let's go. Let's go. Come on, let's go. Questions or comments or things that
of course.
just come to me.
Okay, sure. So I'm Melissa Freiberger and I'm Executive Director here at Sunrise Project.
And I'm Paola Allure. I'm the Programs Manager for Sunrise Project.
And I co-founded Sunrise Project with Emily Hampton. We're actually celebrating our 6th birthday this month here at Sunrise Project. So we got a little bit of time under our belt, but we're still, relatively new compared to other organizations. We work together, Emily and I, for a farm to school program called Healthy Sprouts is how we met. Emily had a vision for creating something that brought people together, that brought in voices that are normally not part of the conversations when it comes to food and equity in our community. And we kind of looked around our community, we definitely did not see something that was already doing that. And we had been to other communities and been inspired by how people use greenhouses and growing spaces and community centers. And in 2015, we created Sunrise Project with the mission to provide space, opportunities for people to come together to build an equitable community through education, good food, and social connection.
How long have you been at the Sunrise Project?
I've been at Sunrise for about a year and a half now. I was hired on as a farm to school program manager, but my position has evolved quite a bit because of COVID-19. But I've been working across all different programs here at Sunrise since I started.
Yeah, so of course, like everyone else, but I think especially because we are about social connection and we identify how social connection is just as important to our health as what we eat, whether or not we smoke, whether or not we drink. Social connection is just as important. And so that is a big emphasis for our organization. When everything shut down and the pandemic hit, we're like, how do you do social connection? How do you reach people? And how do we do our programming? And thankfully, we have a really creative team here that we reflected, put our heads together, and came up with some ways to adapt our programming.
I personally, for my position, one of the things that I did was cook with kids within the classroom, and that wasn't something that was possible. So we kind of took some of the money from our farm to school program and we got the pantry going. And that was kind of a big push to really continue doing programming, even though COVID kind of shut us down for about a month. And we were kind of discouraged of we don't know if we can continue with any of our programming. So we have pivoted the farm to school program to be very virtual and us very hands-off, but also still working with the gardens at the different schools that we partner with. And my position has kind of pivoted to help a lot with the community meals, especially since a lot of the families of East Lawrence do have kids that attend the schools that I work with through my farm to school program.
Yeah, so I'd say funders have been really flexible. So when we asked, it's a USDA grant who's funding our farm to school program specifically, they were all about, use some funds. So we did transform our front porch into a free food pantry that anyone can access at any time. Everything that we do here is open to anyone at no cost, and no one has to prove they deserve it. No one has to fill out any paperwork, no barriers. So you can come and access the pantry, which has a fridge, which we bought with farm to school funds, and got that started. We actually had the idea for a free food fridge before pandemic hit, but we had written some grants and we didn't get it. But that happened, and we knew the community needed access to food. That's something that's really important to us too, is listening to the community and responding. And I think that Sunrise Project's able to be really responsive to the community because we do have relationships with people we're listening to, and then trying to always keep. The pantry is a big one, and then our community meals we were doing twice a month. Kyle wasn't really that involved with them. I was able to really lead those myself, and we like a high number for us to be like 80 people coming through and coming in, and we had 2 hours where people come in, eat together, people from all backgrounds coming together, which is so important. We saw so many people make connections that wouldn't have otherwise. We pivoted that, and now we're serving to-go meals, curbside, and we're hitting like 280, 300 meals every Wednesday.
And we are also, in addition to doing curbside, we have implemented deliveries through volunteer help and good coordination from Grace, our AmeriCorps member, who has been able to help us get that off the ground.
Yeah, it's like 1/3 of the meals that we cook, we deliver. Because transportation is such a barrier, and we really do try to respond to those barriers as much as we can. Yeah, I'm glad you brought in deliveries because it's an important part of it.
Yeah. And I think one of the ways that we've really tried to kind of meet the need of people wanting our food has been through like the way that we have not really set a cap to ourselves yet. And we started with 100 meals that first time that we were just like, we gotta try it back in May, after just having a little bit of like a slump. We were like, all right, let's try it. We did burritos, got 100. We're just like, cool, we can manage this. And then just as the time has progressed, we've reached almost like 300 meals weekly, and we haven't really stopped. We know people like our food because they come back, and they oftentimes do need it. So It's like, we're not here to deter anyone from receiving a hot meal.
Yeah, and we really take pride in our food. I think that unfortunately sometimes when you're trying to feed a lot of people, quality can really suffer, but it's super important to us. So we make everything homemade, it's home cooking, and everyone is welcome. So we get people who donate every single time they come. They'll donate $6 per meal because they want a night off from cooking. And we've also heard that they feel connected. Even though we can't all sit together and eat the meal, it's still shared, and everyone knows they're taking it home. They do get to see a few people take it home and know that we're all having the same thing. And then we get people who, they aren't able to make a donation. And I just think it's cool that we have literally people from all backgrounds that come together still for our meals.
And a different way that we're trying to be better about engaging the community is like with COVID restrictions and following those guidelines. We have invited more like guests to come in and kind of help us create the meals. So we had a community member that's very well known. Her name's Honda. She brought her falafel recipe in, and we brought it to life for 300 people. So it's like we're gradually trying to find more ways to connect people, not just outside, but also here, back out. So it's a big effort.
I think that our relationship with some other organizations has been through like working together to provide youth programming, or working together, like we'll be working with Van Gogh, for example, on Monday to do a community meal with them for MLK Day. I think that those relationships are really important. I also think that Sunrise Project exists a little bit outside of the nonprofit bubble, if that's a good way to put it. We just aren't a typical nonprofit, and that's been intentional because nonprofits do a lot of great work. There's also a lot of sacrifices sometimes you have to make in the nonprofit world. There's all kinds of issues that we are a part of because we're a nonprofit. But
I feel like what you provide, the services you provide have multiple positives to them, as opposed to being like one major specific thing, which I feel like some agencies have one major specific thing.
right, and I think when you're applying for funding for things, that like having that laser focus actually will help, because it's like, oh, you feed hungry people, you house people, I get that, I want to support that. And sometimes like what we do, which is striving to create positive social change through building relationships, through food, can be less obvious to people, like what, they're supporting. I think once people come in and they are part of the Sunrise Project, they get it. And they're just like, yes, this is what we need, on the
Yeah, I think that that's something that we constantly talk about, of how it, in a way, not having that focus allows us to pivot very quickly and just kind of change like what we're doing in a very conscious way. So it's like the pantry it's still community focused, and it still has that social engagement piece, but that wasn't something we did. But because we saw the need, we were able to transform that and still use our vision and our mission to bring that to life. It's not funded or anything, so that's like the harder parts, But I think that's kind of what sets us apart, and like also from making those very like direct relationships with other nonprofits. It's like we do have relationships with a lot of them, in the way that we're all working towards the same goals. I just don't think that there's like a direct, like we get food from Just Food directly. There's no like streamlined way that we're connected. It's more of we are in community with nonprofits too, I think is the best way to put it too.
That is a good way to put it.
For us in a way, like we are very much like more about like a wider array of things.
Yeah,
I feel like
I always word it as multidimensional, and with COVID and the adaptations we've taken for that, it looks different than it did, 9 months ago. Do you have to go to your
Yes.
Oh, you gotta go.
Thank you. Yeah, when we were being asked to remedy a lot of the social problems that are caused by the way wealth is concentrated in our nation and all, so.
I just generally don't want to do like a holistic, multifaceted thing.
Yeah.
But for us, like we like to give
Yeah, I appreciate that. And like when we were talking about the porch, for example, our pantry, it is, I'd say 95% kept up by community. So it's community coming and dropping stuff off for other community members. There's no top-down thunder. It's just community providing for itself and each other, which is what we want Sunrise to be. So we're providing the space, but it's the community that's like actually, making those connections. So yeah, so the basic needs grant will go to funding our community meal program. It'll partially fund it and enabling us to continue serving our 300 meals every week. And then the racial equity grant is funding a session, hopefully which will happen in the spring, of our program called Activate Your Voice. So we, again, going back to that multidimensional aspect of Sunrise Project, we believe that creating the community ties is kind of laying that foundation for civic engagement. We want to feed people, but we also want people to be able to engage in the issues that are causing hunger, causing racism, causing social inequalities, or just facilitate people's involvement in our community. So Activate Your Voice is a program that we started in 2019. We got a Kansas Health Foundation grant to start. And there's leadership opportunities in our community and in our state because we have the Kansas Leadership Center, but it's not accessible to most people. Most people can't take a weekend off and go to Wichita and do the Kansas Leadership Center trainings, but it is this language that you hear a lot, some of the principles. And so we do incorporate Kansas leadership principles into our Activate Your Voice sessions. Then we explore issues that people are interested in engaging in. It's community driven, so community members have actually helped develop this program. And so we'll have community speakers, and then we will also do like field trips. And that'll look different with COVID, but we'd all go to a city commission meeting together, or we'd all go to a school board meeting together. And so we're getting people into these spaces that they've never been in and just helping with that comfort. And so we've heard from people that have been involved in previous sessions of Activate Your Voice that it did make a difference in how they felt as a leader, because we do believe in the Kansas Leadership Center principle that leadership is an activity, not a position, that all of us can be a leader at any time. And that's what we'll be doing this spring. And we will be focusing on Black, Indigenous, people of color, which has been a part of our community that we've always prioritized. So I will say that we're turning 6 this month, and these past 6 years, because all along the way we've been emphasizing relationships and we've built trust with community members and have built a safe space that people of all backgrounds do feel comfortable in and safe and welcome. And of course, with COVID, that looks a little different, but people can drive up and grab a meal and there's no stigma or shame or anything, because like I said, there's all kinds of people coming in and it's not a stigmatized space, which is again how we do all of our programs, including our free food orchard, our free food garden. We just believe that it's really important that free food be destigmatized and that we don't create a space that's just for those people and not those people. So one thing that was really fun before COVID hit, when we had our face-to-face meals, was we call it an international food festival, but we had people that brought food from all around the globe. We had a lot of immigrants from different places, and we heard repeatedly that they feel safe here. That, given the current broader context and climate of our nation, they don't, some people don't feel safe. Or I hear people talk about Lawrence as like a safe haven. Oh, it's this little progressive blue dot in Kansas, and it's so wonderful, but they're not hearing that. There's still a lot of people in our community that don't feel safe, don't have safe spaces to go to, that aren't experiencing our community the same way a white middle class person maybe, or a cis het male. And I think that we've successfully built the trust and the safe space where people do feel comfortable and welcomed here. So we talked about how we are meeting our mission in a creative way and differently during COVID. And I think that a layer that we're putting on our mission right now is care. I think that when we're talking about sending these meals out or greeting people in their cars and giving them meals, we're not only filling their tummies with good food, but people are feeling cared for. And I think that right now, especially during the pandemic, that's needed more than ever. And so I feel like Sunrise Project has become a space that can demonstrate that care that everyone needs and deserves. Also, just giving that space for community members to care for each other. We're super grateful for the funding, for sure, because this is our first time to ever get funded through United Way. And there's definitely changes that we've noticed with the way that United Way presents itself. And obviously with like racial equity grants, I don't think that's ever been anything that's been done before in our community. And it's awesome. I mean, the fact that there's a funder in our community saying like, this is their priority is so needed. It's so needed. To me, like putting that funding there and prioritizing projects for Black, Indigenous, and people of color is just on point.